Hi there, my name is Nora Crone. I'm a violist in New York City and a Musicians Full of Dystonia recovery advocate. In the first part of today's video, I'm going to talk about why the best route to focal dystonia recovery is housing it in a system of playing that's based on physical logic. And in the second part, I'll offer two tools that can help: somatic observation and visualization. If you're dealing with a different injury, or if you're not injured, you can still stick around to learn more about how these tools can increase your capacity for healthy, efficient movement at the instrument. Now, as anyone suffering from it could tell you, the experience of musicians' focal dystonia is one of great confusion. All of the well-worn paths through our motor memory are gone or no longer make sense. And the process of recovery, at least the one I went through, means doing something very brave and counterintuitive. It means letting those old paths recede and creating new ones that actually work much better than the old ones ever did. So how do we do that? Essentially, we use healthy movement to restructure our brain. We identify the precise movements needed for playing in a healthy context, often away from the instrument or with the opposite hand or arm, and then ask the affected body part to produce that movement instead of the dystonic one. Repeating this process over time creates new neural pathways. But this part is crucial, at least based on my personal experience and that of many others I know. Playing-related injuries, and musicians' focal dystonia in particular, need to be understood in the context of the playing technique that caused them, or at the very least, that houses them. If we're going to recover fully, we need an approach to playing that serves all of our musical needs without sacrificing the physical logic that enables our body and brain to function sensibly and successfully. Let me give you an example. So during my recovery, I labored for many months to get my third finger to stretch itself forward in the direction of the string rather than curling backwards, which was one of my primary dystonic symptoms. And eventually, with serious mental effort, I was able to train myself to do it. But it still felt pretty terrible, and playing in general still felt pretty weird and unreliable. And what I wish I had known during all of those hours standing in front of the mirror, willing my finger to extend, was that the entire premise of that movement was incorrect. Here's what I mean. So if you touch spots on your arm, you can touch them lightly or more firmly. What you'll notice is that your forearm brings your hand and finger to the desired spot. The finger does its tiny little finger-sized motion to touch the spot. And then you can engage it more or less deeply by sending energy through the forearm, wrist, hand, and finger in the direction of the surface. You do not freeze your arm in space a certain distance away and then individually stretch your finger out to touch or press. Once I learned this, which I should mention was through my work with a violinist named Sophie Till and something called the Till approach, I stopped fighting against my dystonic symptoms and instead gradually dismantled the context that was causing them to begin with. So that's just one example. But the greater point I'm making is that dystonia recovery is much more effective when it takes place in the context of an overall approach to playing that is based on rock-solid physical logic, the same physical logic we use in all of our other daily movements and tasks. And that very often requires the guidance of someone who can see where and how things are going wrong. Unfortunately, there really is no substitute for direct one-on-one work in this type of recovery with someone who understands your instrument, although there are general tools that you may find useful. The two I want to focus on today are somatic observation and visualization. So one of the most powerful factors in moving my recovery forward was developing a keen awareness of the sensations in my brain and body, the tiny nuances of experience that helped me distinguish the right movement from the wrong one. And the more chances I had to feel healthy movement, the easier it became to recognize. It felt physically and cognitively clean, unpolluted by excessive brain activity or physical or emotional discomfort. Fine-tuned observation also kept bringing up successive layers of dysfunction that needed to be erased. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't work. My other arm looks like this. And it was maddening, actually, because it seemed never-ending. And yet, this increasing sensitivity propelled me farther and farther toward my ideal, a playing technique that doesn't just work well and feel tolerable, but that actually feels good. Another application of observation, besides how our movements feel or what we perceive to be happening based on our kinesthetic sense, is what we see in our mind's eye when we contemplate a movement. Observing the details, the picture our brain holds of a particular movement or a part of our body can give us crucial information about the logic or organization that the brain is employing. For instance, if you play an upper string instrument, close your eyes and ask yourself how you see your left arm in relation to the fingerboard. Many of us might say that it's parallel to the fingerboard on the right side. And yet, if we stop to really examine the location of the arm, we see that it's actually at a diagonal to the instrument. If I ask, what does your mind see when I say F sharp? Many violinists and violists might say a second finger. But if I handed you a computer keyboard and asked, what does your mind see when I say H? You would see the letter H in a particular spot on the keyboard, not the finger that you'd use to touch it. So those are just two examples of how asking what the brain sees can help us recognize where we've been relying on alien logic and need to correct our blueprint. Once we have a solid blueprint for a healthy movement, we can use the tool of visualization in ever greater detail to steer our brain where we want it to go. Can we see all parts of the body moving and responding in appropriate ways? Are there parts we can't see or where we have competing pictures? In a sense, the tools of visualization and somatic observation enable us to examine the mechanisms behind our movements and even modify them, even at the neural level, through intention and repetition. Pretty amazing, right? So especially at first, we usually need some help navigating the mess up here. But over time, these tools become more than strategies for moving past musicians' vocal dystonia. We can use them to achieve ever greater refinement of our skills towards new paths of expression and ease. And that's why this approach to dystonia is about so much more than recovery. If you liked this video or found it helpful, please do me a favor and hit like and subscribe. If you want to know more about me, you can visit my website, www.noracrone.com. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.